Looking for a weight loss solution that actually works? Weight Loss by Hers provides access to GLP-1 medications with personalized care to help you hit your goals. Hers is transforming women's healthcare by providing access to affordable weight loss treatment plans delivered straight to your door if prescribed. Hers offers a holistic weight loss program with personalized solutions, including compounded GLP-1 weekly injections featuring the same active ingredient as Ozempic and Wegovy or oral medication kits. So if you've been struggling with your weight loss journey, it's time to find the best option that works for you through Hers. Start your initial free online visit today at forhers.com/KKC. That's FORHERS.com/KKC for your personalized weight loss treatment options. forhers.com/KKC. Hers weight loss is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions apply. Wegovy and Ozempic are not compounded. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased.
Ready to electrify your drive? Hyundai's cutting-edge EV lineup is about to change everything you thought you knew about electric vehicles. Prepare to be captivated by a range that's as bold as it is brilliant. From the lightning-fast Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6, charging from 10 to 80% in a mere 18 minutes, to the tech-packed cabins boasting highway driving assist and blind spot collision warning, Hyundai EVs are redefining the electric experience. And with America's best warranty, including a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited electric battery warranty, you'll drive with unmatched confidence. Hyundai's EVs aren't just the future. They're the now you've been waiting for. Learn more about Hyundai's EVs at HyundaiUSA.com. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details. America's best warranty claim based on total package of warranty programs. See dealer for limited warranty details. See your Hyundai dealer for further details and limitations.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. Today's episode is about truly one of the most bizarre true crime cases that I've ever heard about. And it actually happened right where I live. My guest today is Matt Murphy, former homicide prosecutor and legal analyst who worked on this exact case. And I wanted to give you fair warning that elements of this case touch on assault. This episode is about Wicked Game, the Devil in the Desert. On October 2nd, 2012, 3 men broke into the home of Michael, the 28-year-old owner of a marijuana dispensary. The kidnappers had plotted for months. They used disguises in a rented van, burner phones, and surveillance cameras. They believed that he had $1 million in cash buried in the Mojave Desert, and that faced with enough pain, he would eventually lead them to the money. They came for him at his 25th Street Newport Peninsula home before dawn, blindfolded him and dragged him and the girlfriend of his housemate, Mary Barnes, into the back of the waiting van. They couldn't see their faces as they took him on a 142-mile journey deep into the desert. They tortured Michael and eventually left. And Mary, the girlfriend of the housemate, was finally able to get free and run to the highway for rescue. And they both survived. After the kidnapping, Newport Beach detectives found an astute neighbor of the victims who not only reported having seen a dented white pickup at the scene, but also had jotted down the license plate number, which eventually led to the attackers. Key to the prosecution's case was the testimony of Courtney Shagarian, the former wife of Hossein Nayeri, who was the alleged mastermind of the plot. And while they initially thought she was involved, she agreed to cooperate with authorities and helped lure him, Hossein Nayeri, out of Iran so they could arrest him. Hossein Nayeri was convicted of torture and kidnapping charges. And unbelievably, on January 22nd, 2016, he and 2 other inmates of Orange County Men's Central Jail in Santa Ana, California, escaped from the jail's maximum security unit by climbing through the plumbing pipes and ascending to the roof. But he was eventually arrested 7 days later. This was a years-long investigation that spanned sting operations, an international search, a prison break captured on cell phone, and a courtroom showdown between the lead prosecutor, Matt Murphy, and the man authorities believed was pulling the strings in a twisted game of greed and violence, Hossein Nayeri. Set during the early days of the medical marijuana, Wicked Game, Devil in the Desert is a gripping 3-part docuseries told through intimate access inside the case and to those who lived the story unlike any other. The docuseries showcases rare evidence stills, body cam and dash cam videos of gripping key moments, recorded police interviews with the victims and suspects, and features new interviews with the lead prosecutor and deputy counsel and the lead detective on the case. And the series also incorporates 2020's groundbreaking past reporting on the case, including archival interviews with victims and also Nayeri, the so-called mastermind himself. Wicked Game: The Devil in the Desert is produced for Hulu by ABC News Studios. Here is my interview with Matt Murphy. Matt Murphy, you and I are destined to be friends. I was just saying, the wackiest thing about moving to Southern California is I suddenly felt like so many crime stories take place in Southern California. Hermosa Beach, Huntington Beach, sometimes Manhattan Beach. Newport Beach has had quite a bit of cases. And now that I have lived here for 20 years, it is kind of creepy. Like with the Naposki case, like I drive past that neighborhood all the time. And this specific case I got obsessed with because it was on the peninsula. And I'm not kidding you, about last week, I drove past the house and whomever I was with, I said, well, that was where the big case happened. So I am already familiar with this, obsessed with the case. It has so many twists and turns. And when you were working on this case, you were a homicide prosecutor, correct?
Right. So I had Newport for 17 years. So I did all of Newport Beach's murders. I had the Tom and Jackie Hawks case, McLaughlin. We also rolled out, we would go, since it's a vertical unit. So for those who don't know, Orange County does it a little bit differently. A lot of DA's offices work in assembly lines. So essentially it's like the police investigate it independently by themselves. And then they might talk to the deputy DA assigned to warrants if they need a warrant. Then it goes to somebody else to file it, somebody else to arraign it, somebody else to do the pretrial, somebody else to do the prelim or the grand jury presentation. And it goes all up, step by step up to the person that's going to finally try it. And what they started doing in the early 80s, a guy named Ed Freeman, and along with a guy who just passed away, Francisco Briceño, who were two war heroes, they decided to do it differently. So they'd assign you, instead of doing the assembly line thing, they assign you a city. So you're responsible for all the murders. So you deal with the same detectives over and over again. You develop a relationship. You know who's good, who you got to watch, a little more closely, who's young, who might need to learn. They learn your strengths. And so you're there the night of the murder, and the lead detective assigned to the case goes all the way up, all the way through trial and sentencing. And that guy or that woman will be sitting next to you through the whole trial. So you've got like a team that's assembled right after the homicide. And then that team works together all the way through to the sentencing of the case. So it's a way better mousetrap. And by doing that, also by going to the scene, oftentimes before the bodies have been moved, you get a real visceral sense of the enormity of your responsibility as a prosecutor. Because you meet the families. First thing I'd always do is sit down with the moms and dads and explain the process to them. And you sort of bond with those people. And it becomes in the way Orange County, they also let you stay as a professional. Like if you're eating what you kill, so to speak, if you're bringing home good verdicts and the cops like you and you're getting results and you're doing a good job, they let you stay. So it becomes almost this weird addiction where you start looking for tougher and tougher cases, or a case maybe that nobody else wants, like McLaughlin. McLaughlin got passed on twice.
Wow.
He was 15 years old when we decided to take a run at them. And we convicted Nanette Johnson and Eric Naposki. They both got LWOP sentences in California State Prison, which is life without possibility of parole. And that case got refused back in the day. So It was a special time, special place to work. And yes, you're not wrong about Newport. Newport is a big, giant beacon, and it happens. People will go to Newport, and like McLaughlin. I mean, that was a murder for financial gain. And you see quite a few of those. Same with Tom and Jackie Hawks, Newport Beach, the couple that got thrown off their yacht.
I remember when that happened too. I would walk around Balboa Island and see the signs looking for them. Yeah,
well, one day I should take you on a murder tour through Newport. Yeah, yes. I mean, there's some of the not so famous ones too, like the Sportsman's Liquor Store. We had a murder there. Some idiot, like the opposite of sophistication. He tried to steal a porno mag and he pushed the poor shopkeeper down, and the guy hit his head and died. So yeah, Newport's a fascinating place. It's a great police department, though.
So let's go back to 2012, October. This is such a bizarre case, horrifying case. Let's walk through why this is such an absolutely diabolical person who is committing these acts and sort of orchestrating all of this.
Yeah, well, this is so. Yeah, like I just said, I was in homicide for 17 years, but I was in sex for almost 4 years before that. So about 21 years. And I had the Golden State Killer. I had Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. Anna Kendrick just came out with a movie on that. I've did some really gruesome, horrific serial killer cases. And there's something about this one where the victim actually lived that is just uniquely disturbing. This is something that the level of sadism and just unnecessary cruelty in this case is just off the charts. Hossein Nayeri was born in Iran, and he was there when the Islamic Revolution happened. At least his parents were, and that there was a lot of uprooting of families, and he wound up coming here. I think when he was, I want to say he was 11. Maybe he might have been a little bit older than that, but he came to Fresno, and his father allegedly ran afoul of the regime there and disappeared. So his mom, who's a lawyer in Iran, is very much still in the picture and in his life. And so he was raised, went to a place called Clovis West High School in Fresno, joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. And that's when things really started going wrong for him. He went AWOL from the Marines. They originally gave him a dishonorable discharge. He contested that. They gave him a general discharge, but he was released from the Marine Corps. And he kind of went all in the marijuana growing business. And marijuana is a fascinating thing in the state of California from a legal perspective, because it's like the Wild West. So for years and years, like the old bootleggers in the 30s, the guys that, all the movies are from, and Al Capone, and, that was, the guys who were making, Kentucky whiskey back in those days, when they made it illegal, they didn't just keep making whiskey. Like the legitimate law-abiding people, got new jobs. It was the vacuum that was filled there. And that was filled by people like Al Capone, or this real criminal element that satisfied the market, right? It's the same thing you see with cocaine and other things. But with marijuana, a lot of people have this image of sort of, my buddy Jeff calls it unicorn riding hippies, right? Mm-hmm. Like, happy-go-lucky, nice hippies, and those are the people in the marijuana world. And I rolled into homicide essentially with that belief, almost like I had this weird myth in my own brain as a prosecutor about some hierarchy of drug dealers. Like cocaine dealers must be really bad because they're connected to the cartels. Cartels, meth dealers must be even worse. And what I learned pretty quickly, I did the murder of a 22-year-old young man named Matt Large, and he had a Huntington. And you learn pretty quick when you're doing homicide cases that they're every bit as ruthless and as cruel and criminal as any other kind of drug dealer. And but what happened when California made it legal is you have legitimate business people coming in, mm-hmm. and they basically pay fair wages and they honor contracts and they do what you're supposed to do as a business person. And what it has done is it has squeezed out and put a lot of pressure on the criminal element that was there. The profit margins dropped massively. They're supposed to pay taxes, but where it kind of goes off the rails is it's still a federal crime. So all the banks, like Bank of America, all the retail banking institutions and any banking institutions, that F that we see, the FDIC at the front of every bank, stands for federal. So as a result, marijuana is an almost all cash business. The people behind the scenes that are selling the vape containers that the THC goes into, it's all cash. It's all cash because the banks won't work with anything. They can't aid, facilitate, or promote a federal crime, which marijuana cultivation, sales, and possession in large quantities is still federally illegal. So the banks don't do it. So at the end of every business day, at the end of a successful dispensary, there will be a pile of money. And so the criminal guys that are still in the business know that. So it's sort of this recipe for disaster. And that's what happened in this case.
Well, Hossein becomes so obsessed with the money that Michael seems to be making that he concocts this plan. And this results in them going out into the desert. And he's assuming that he's got like $1 million somewhere in the desert. I think often of Michael and what he went through. And I'm grateful that you guys have never revealed his last name and he's had a decent amount of privacy. Is he okay now?
Oh, gosh. What does okay mean? This is one of the most disturbing things about this case. And I want to say yes. I got to know his dad pretty well through this case. I really liked Michael. I really liked his father. I liked his family, which is one of the things that makes this so unbelievably brutal. I mean, I hope so. He puts on a brave face, but I don't know how you get over something like that. There's just every day there's physical reminders, and it's not just the sexual mutilation of that poor guy. The way they abused him. I don't know if it was a combination of the taser gun and the bleach, or they stood on his shoulder when they sexually mutilated him. And one of the guys, and now to this day, when he drinks wine, he says when his skin gets flushed, you can still see the waffle pattern on the guy's boot, that will still come out in his skin. Wow. So that's something that, he received pretty bad injuries to his shoulder, like legitimate, orthopedic injuries as well. So it's this poor guy. And the thing is, he's innocent. That's another thing. A lot of dope ropes, they call them, people that are, dealing meth or dealing cocaine, they get involved with the wrong people. And next thing you know, you've got a homicide or some sort of horrible crime. Michael, according to California law, was literally innocent of everything. And he never ripped off Nayeri or any of the other people involved in his cabal of co-conspirators. He never, slept with his wife. The guy did nothing wrong.
Behind those cozy nights at home, thousands of employees at BP go to work every day. People producing more U.S. natural gas. People building grid-scale solar capacity. People turning landfill waste gas into pipeline-quality renewable natural gas. And people delivering all of that power where it's needed. They're part of the more than 300,000 jobs BP supports across the country. Learn more at bp.com/investing in America.
As you write your life story, you're far from finished. Are you looking to close the book on your job? Maybe turn a page in your career? Be continued at the Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies. Our professional master's degrees and certificates are designed to meet you where you are and take you where you want to go. At Georgetown SCS, the learning never stops, and neither do you. Write your next chapter. Be continued at scs.georgetown.edu/podcast.
What happened was that they had been placing trackers on his car. Yeah. And they saw him drive out to the desert one day on these trackers. And keep this in context, I've seen a million cases where they have what are called burner phones. That's when a conspiracy they'll buy those, $80 flip phones, and they can all communicate with each other with a phone that is untraceable to any individual person, because you can pay for those in cash, right? So it's a burner phone that doesn't have existed forever, whatever. This is the first case where I ever encountered a burner laptop. They actually got a laptop that they used to download the data from these trackers, which is really clever. So that way, if the police ever search their actual personal devices, their cell phones or computers, they'd be totally clean. So they use this burner laptop to facilitate this crime. And part of that was downloading the data from these vehicle trackers that they had. And he took a meaningless potential investment in real estate. Like he was looking at a gold mine out in the middle of nowhere in the Mojave Desert, and somehow they got it in their head, or at least Nayeri did, that, that's where Alibaba's treasure is buried. Must be a pile of cash in the desert, which makes absolutely no sense. And it's one of the truly fascinating things about this case is that when we started putting it together in the investigation, and we started working with Courtney Shigerian's lawyer, Lou Rosenblum, who's my old boss, and the man is absolutely brilliant. And he, I'll put it in polite words, but he's like, it's 95% genius, 5% stupidity. And stupidity was not his word, but the point is the same. And it was essentially, they took all these elaborate steps to keep their identity, as far away as possible. Like, for example, the van, they didn't just rent a van. And they didn't just get like one of their peripheral co-conspirators to rent a van. They got Naomi Rodas, they got her to get her friend who had no idea what was going on. She rented the van. So it's like so it's like 3 people removed from our mastermind. They use that in the crime. That's a really clever thing. To order all the surveillance equipment, they set up a fake email and they used a fake name, and they should have gotten probably a mailbox, et cetera, to mail it. So they take, they come up with a Yahoo account, fake name. They're using it off site. So they're doing it out of Fresno instead of Orange County. And, but then they have them mailed to Kyle Hanley's house. So it's like 95% super clever. And then they blow
just
it in the clutch,
just to blow up.
That. Yeah. And the thing is, when you're dealing with Newport PD or a guy like Ryan Peters, who is the best of the best, like the detectives I got to work with on pretty much my entire time when I was in homicide, but especially at Newport, a guy named Court Depwig, another one named Dave Byington, these wonderful, dedicated police officers that I, truly are, the guys were geniuses, and they made me look good over and over again over the years. But when you have a case like that, where, that 5%, if you got a detective like Ryan Peters, he's going to exploit that 5%. And so they were able to track that all back to this marijuana, like hydroponic grow store in Fresno called AgriGlobe. And there was the name was fake, but a woman connected to Hossein Nayeri worked there named Naomi Rodas. And because they were able to get the IP address that all this stuff was ordered. So fake email, fake name, but the IP address led to this woman that we were also able to flip, who provided evidence to us, including coughing up. Eventually, we got the burner computer and one of the shotguns, or one of the firearms, a pump action 12-gauge shotgun that was certainly used in the kidnapping. So we got all that from her. So it's like that with really good detectives. If there's that one little crack, they will exploit it, and that's how cases fall apart. But the best part on this was, after getting that van and taking all these elaborate steps and having trackers on the cars and surveillance cameras, Kyle Hanley, stoner that he is, takes his own truck down rather than using the van. I will never figure this out again. 95% clever, 5% pure stupidity. And that's when he dropped them off. He used his own truck for whatever reason. And that's when the neighbor got the license plate. So that was the real key. And the police found that on a canvas. So what happens is, you have this horrific kidnapping. They torture Michael all the way out. They cut off his penis in the desert. Absolutely unbelievable sadism. I've never seen anything like it. And the guy's innocent. They leave him to die. They also kidnapped Michael's roommate's girlfriend, who happened to be spending the night, who was there. So they throw her in the back of the van. She thinks she's going to die. And she's sort of the unspoken victim in this whole thing, because she was also kidnapped for the purpose of financial gain. She also went through this horrific ordeal. And here's them torturing this poor innocent man for about 2.5 hours to get out to where they're going, with a taser, with a blowtorch. It's just horrific. They pour bleach all over him in the desert. They cut his penis off. They take it with them. And she thinks they're going to die. And they dropped a knife when they left, and she managed to cut the bindings off her feet. Which is unbelievable. Wound up seeing lights off in the distance, right? Middle of the desert, starts running barefoot, finds a highway. And the first car she sees is a guy named Steve Williams, Deputy Williams, who is a crack police officer, awesome guy on his way to work in his patrol car in the boonies of the Mojave Desert. And he sees a woman with like a blindfold on her face, like still hands zip tied behind her back with bindings and, still on her ankles, running across the highway in pajamas trying to flag him down. So he did fabulous work. She's able to somehow guide them back to where Michael was. And they find him, very much in shock. He should have died, but he, fortunately lived. But yeah, so then he has no idea who did this to him. So there's no, he has like this poor guy. He has very little to offer the police as far as, suspects. And so they do what's called a canvass. And Newport's so professional. All that means is they knock on every door around the crime scene. And traditionally, you never get anything from canvasses. You get like a lot of people want to help. And you chase down raccoon nests because there's a noise coming from over there. Right. Or the trash cans, or like you find out somebody got in an argument with their wife or their boyfriend or whoever. And like you wind up chasing red herrings around. Well, this was one where they knock on the door and she's like, I did see something weird. I saw this truck and I saw these boys get out of the truck with yellow hard hats that looked too clean. And they're like, please tell us if you can describe the truck. And she's like, well, what did the license plate do? I wrote it down.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, you can't make this stuff up. So I've kind of like, she's wonderful. It's like that neighbor that we all hated when we were in college, when we wanted to be too loud at 2 a.m. That person, is a godsend when it comes to the investigation of violent crimes. The neighbor that actually looks out the window and writes down license plates, and if it wasn't for her, all of these guys would have gotten away with this.
How many people are working on the team, would you say, on this case?
Gosh. So I get brought in initially, it's my guys, right? So I've been with Newport for 10 years at this point. And it's, so it's my detectives, and this one is off the hook. So they immediately contact me to help with warrants. And because the fear was initially at the scene, especially, that this poor guy might die. So it's like homicide, they call me, we start doing the warrants, and then it becomes apparent pretty quickly that he's going to live. So I try to give it to what's called our felony panel, because it wouldn't fit under one of any of the other, vertical units like gangs or sexual assault necessarily. So this is going to go to a non-homicide group. So this would go to my friend Dennis in the felony panel. So he was the head of the unit, and his assistant head of court was a woman named Heather Brown, who wound up being my trial partner on this. And I love her. She's one of my best friends. So I give it to Dennis, and very quickly, Dennis realizes how utterly complex this case is. And, and I had a full caseload in homicide. So he called me and he's like, look, you got to take it back. This is too heavy for, the felony panel staffed with relatively inexperienced lawyers that are straight out of misdemeanors. And so I said, I'll take it back, but only if Heather comes with it. So we got to do that together, because I always wanted to do a case with my friend. And so Dennis was involved at the beginning. There was Heather, myself, a series of investigators in the DA's office. There's a woman named Erin Rowe, who was our extradition deputy. He's now a Superior Court judge, another good friend of mine. She was basically, her job was finding violent criminals around the world that had fled Orange County, and repatriating them. So she would work with the FBI and U.S. Marshal's office.
Oh my Lord.
Really interesting job. So we had somebody that's all she did, thank God. And so she knew how to essentially execute this crazy hunt that we had. So we were able to identify Kyle Hanley pretty quickly. We arrest him, we charge him, and what happened was the real mastermind, Hossein Nayeri, he hit the bricks and fled back to Iran. So now the question becomes, do we just charge everybody that we know we can get and put a warrant in the system for this guy and move on? Or do we try to actually see if we can lure this guy out of a country that's never going to extradite him? And that became really the fascinating part of the case for me, because I got to work with that wonderful team with Ryan and Newport PD especially. But Nayeri's wife is a woman named Courtney Shigirian, who was a law student at the time. And she was initially to us, she appeared very much to be a co-conspirator in this whole thing. So her family hired my old boss, Lou Rosenblum, and my mentor, and one of the best lawyers I know for sure, but also one of the best humans I've ever known. And Lou is a true hunter, and he hates bad guys, but he was representing the wife. So Lou put together this idea with Ryan Peters, where they would see if they could lure Nayeri into an extraditable country. And it took about 10 months. And these guys went to work on this, and it was just brilliant.
Brilliant is the perfect word. Brilliant.
Yeah. So they go to work, and we do what's called a proffer with Courtney Shigerian. We sit her down. She tells us everything she knew, and she was very honest. And we decided that we would work with her with the idea that there's no offers up front at all. You just you give them an opportunity to tell the truth and to cooperate. And then the defense lawyer involved has to trust you ultimately to do the right thing in the end. And this is a guy who literally taught me how to do murder cases. He's the one that recruited me in a homicide. So, we had this unique relationship of I think of trust, and I still to this day, I can't believe that it worked, but she decided to take they sent her to his uncle's funeral, and she ran into Nayeri's sister there. And so
she played the long game. She played the long game.
Yes. So it took us almost 2 years to get him back to the United States. And I mean, the ins and outs of that are just incredible. And, talking to the FBI, I'm on the phone with this special agent in charge, of like the European group and it's like, how should we do this? If we're going to buy the ticket from Iran for this post-bar trip that she was talking about with Nayeri's sister before any of this stuff happened, what's the best country we could fly him into to route him? Like, should we just fly him directly into Spain, which is where they'd been talking about going? What should we do? And it was an education for me. And he was like, look, a lot of the classic American ally, Western European NATO countries are horrible with extraditions. You wouldn't think this, but like UK, he said, was the worst. France, not far behind. And they have a bunch of our violent criminals. And for some reason, there's a ton of our child molesters that are in the UK for whatever reason, and they won't extradite them. So turns out the key is former Soviet bloc. And they trust our judicial system, and they cooperate, and they love America. So we fly them to the Czech Republic. And the guy's like, fly them to the Czech Republic and they will extradite. So we get them to Prague. I still can't believe that it worked, but the Czechoslovakian border police arrested him and held him in a prison built by the Nazis during World War II. You can believe that. And in, I think, something close to solitary confinement, I don't know. But he spent almost a year there as the extradition proceedings went through the courts in Prague, and he was extradited to New York, where Ryan Peters handcuffed him. And, here we have it, we're high-fiving. And we'd already prosecuted Kyle. So I'd seen the evidence already once. It was incredibly compelling. And then Nayeri escaped from the Orange County jail. And it's just one of those stories that it's just right when you think you got it, it's going to finally end. It takes a wild turn. And so they were out for a week, and then they recaptured him. And also there's a full-blown embassy, an Iranian embassy in Tijuana. And they don't check your ID when you go south, And as growing up in Southern California, and as a surfer, especially back in the olden days, we would just drive south to go surfing all the time as teenagers, and you just cross the border, So all you need to do is head south and go to the Iranian embassy, and they're not going to help us. And they're going to figure out a way to fly them home, and instead they went north. Again, 95% genius, 5% pure stupidity. They went north instead, and we caught him a week later. And then we had one of the wildest jury trials. It wound up being my last jury trial as a DA. I was a DA for 26 years, and this was my very last trial. In fact, to take the verdict, I had to be resworn. My last day was Thursday, and the jury came back late Thursday afternoon. So I had to get resworn on Friday morning so I could go take the verdict.
Get ready for epic family fun at Capital One Arena. January 24th through January 26th, it's the Monster Jam. Bigger trucks, bigger stunts, and even bigger thrills. Then on February 14th, WWE takes over with electrifying action and your favorite superstars live in the ring. Don't miss the Harlem Globetrotters on March 8th, a slam dunk of fun for everyone. Tickets are on sale now at CapitalOneArena.com. Don't wait, grab your seats tonight and secure memorable moments for your whole family.
This is a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup sound experiment. We're looking to find the perfect way to hear Reese's so you'll buy more of them. Here we go. Reese's, 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 Reese's. Hey, get out of here, you little stinker. Reese's.
Reese's.
Reese's. Peanut Butter Cups. That breathy one sounded very creepy, am I right?
You know what I was wondering too when I was looking back at the coverage of the trial? You know, he's obviously, clearly just one of the most horrible people. But the way he's sort of like taunting you guys in the courtroom, when someone is like that and they're taunting you, what is running through your head? Is it more like, okay, dude? Or is it more like, I am going to decimate you?
Well, you know, it's funny. There's a third category, and that is like when you first start out as a young deputy. I would want to crush everybody, yeah. and then I realized that I was kind of like bringing myself down to their level. And as like a young guy, I'm 26 years old, right when I started, and it's like, is that guy mad dogging me? Like he's staring at me. Like then you reach a point of sort of like professionalism and experience where it's like, I wouldn't even look at these guys anymore. They were not a part of they did not pierce the veil of my universe, but then you reach a point, especially in homicide cases, where it's called making them flash. When it comes to crimes of violence, you want the jury to see that, and you want them to do that. It's like some of the clips that was, with Nayeri, you want the jury to see them angry. And, he was easy, because he wanted to spar. Because by the time we actually got to trial on it, he'd read everything that we had done. He read all about how we turned his wife against him. He read all about how we set up, we recorded every phone call between the two of them. And it's important to do that so the defense has it all, and like every step that we took was carefully documented. It's called Brady, so that defense is aware of every single thing we did during the course of that investigation. But the upshot is when he finally gets the discovery and reads it, here's a guy who's a very smart guy. He's got no moral compass whatsoever, but and he's incredibly sadistic. He's incredibly cruel. But he's also a smart dude with an ego. And he looks at all that and realizes that not only did we outsmart him, but we turned his wife against him. And we turned Courtney Shearian against him. And we turned Ryan. It's like that scene in the Punisher where he's like, made you kill your son, made you kill your wife, made you kill your best friend. Ryan Kevorkian turned on him. He gave us a proffered interview where he told us everything that happened. That was the third guy in the van. Naomi Rodas turned on him. His wife turned on him. Everybody in his little circle, we turned every one of those people against him, and we outsmarted him, and we caught him. And he was safe in Iran, and we lured him out. And so by the time he got to court, he hated my guts. And there's a moment that actually didn't make it into the documentary, but we recovered a flip phone from one of the vehicles. So right before the kidnapping, there was a high-speed chase through Newport where somebody had blown a stop sign, just a nothing sort of traffic thing. And instead of just stopping, this person drives, 100 miles an hour through Newport Beach, winds up like stopping the car on the Balboa Peninsula and swims for it. And this person gets away from the cops. So this car gets impounded. And when the police finally looked inside after our case, they had no idea that the cases were connected. They found a burner cell phone and they found all of the surveillance equipment with these car trackers. And it turns out that Nayeri had been switching out camera batteries because these things would run out of batteries. So they take one of these cameras from the car and they plug in the data, and the first image is Michael's house in Newport Beach. So we've got a very clear connection. But they look at the phone and they look at all the pictures taken on this burner phone. So we had these photos. So Nayeri's on the stand, and for whatever reason, he's like, I never went to Michael's business. You know, he tried to blame Kyle for everything. Kyle had already been convicted at this point, a separate trial. He's like, Kyle put this whole thing together. All I was doing was doing a little bit of surveillance for Kyle because Michael owed him money. It's all a gigantic lie, demonstrative falsehood in every way. But he's a con man, right? So he is incredibly smooth and manipulative. And his direct examination, he had a great lawyer. This guy, Sal Chula, phenomenal trial lawyer. And his direct, he's crying about his background, and it's just like, it's all bullshit. But he is selling it. And this is a guy who can get an entire group of people to do his bidding for him, and this is also a guy who managed to manipulate, the judge in he had a vehicular manslaughter case, back in Fresno where he killed one of his best friends in a rollover accident. This guy, Hossein Nayeri, who was he's like a business partner of Nayeri. He's rolled over, killed him. And then Nayeri fled to Iran, comes back and convinces the judge with some boohoo story. He gets a slap on the wrist. When he went AWOL from the Marine Corps, he convinces them, give me a general discharge, which is a totally different thing than a dishonorable discharge. Dishonorable is really bad. Convinces them general discharge. The police arrested him for a domestic violence case out of Irvine against Courtney. And he got a deferred entry of judgment. It's called a DEJ, where it's basically you take a traffic school class on domestic violence, and got his case dismissed. So he was afforded opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And so his story was, he was convincing on direct. So on cross, the idea is get him to flash, get the jury to seem angry. And this guy hated me. I'm sure he still hates me.
It's like the eyebrow work, like the smirks.
Oh my God. But so there's all these photos that we recovered that are just, they're of like one of those directories inside of office buildings, with the little plastic letters, suite 2A,
sure.
Like Joe's like solar panels or whatever, and so our victim's business was on these photos. So it had like the different businesses. Why he wanted to take photos of that, I don't know. But on direct examination, he denied ever going into the business. He denied ever entering the building. And it was almost a throwaway lie, and you never know, and when you look at these things, it just looks like a picture of and it's like 5 or 6 of them. And it just looks like a picture of one of those glass boxes with the stuff on the inside showing the suite numbers and the And about halfway through trial, Heather, who she's really funny and she's awesome. And she's like, Murphy, look at this. And if you look closely, not in the first one, not in the second one, not in the third one, but in the fourth one,
you see
and especially the
reflection.
fifth one, you see the reflection.
God bless.
Right? So he had denied doing this. So the way you do that as a young prosecutor, you weigh in with the first one and said, you said you didn't know that.
Yeah,
but as an
you
experienced
lead into
trialer,
it.
what you do is you make them lie to the jury again and again and again.
Yeah, like,
so
no,
you show them the
what are
first
you
one.
talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
really,
so you didn't take this picture? No, I didn't. And you move on to another topic. And you come back with photo number 2. And because you didn't take the first one, I'm assuming that means you didn't take this one either.
So good.
And it's Nayeri, right? So, I already told you I didn't go in there. And he has no idea where it's going. And then you get to photo number 3, and we have a great judge who's going to let me, he knows I'm going somewhere with it. He's going to let me do my cross-examination. And then it's like, you sure about that? Because you're telling the truth here to this jury about going into the business, just like you are about everything else, right, Mr. Nayeri? Like,
yeah.
And then I hit him with the zinger, which is him in aviator shades. It is friggin' him. You just have to look at the reflection instead of the what the photo is actually of, and it's him. And there he is. He's caught and alive to the jury. And so now he really hates me. It's like that scene from Tombstone. Now I really hate him. Now he really hates me because I've caught him in a lie in front of the jury, like a demonstrative falsehood under oath to them. And then I get to the final question, and they do show this. And it's like, we're all wondering, everybody in this room is wondering, why couldn't you just leave it there? You cut it off. Why couldn't you at least give the poor guy, a chance to get it reattached? And he threatened me from the stand, and that clip is in there. And he's like, he threatens me from the witness stand, which you're trying to draw that out. So in a closing argument, again, I wish they'd included this in the doc. It's not in there, but, the way you argue that is, ladies and gentlemen, let's just think about this for a second.
Right.
That's a guy who is sitting in here in a superior courtroom, superior court judge sitting on his left. I'm surrounded by armed police officers. There's like 6 bailiffs because this is after his escape. But most importantly, he's sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. He's sitting next to a group of people who are going to decide his fate. And he threatens a senior deputy district attorney from the witness stand. Imagine what that guy is like when he's in a van in the middle of the desert. You're not there. The judge isn't there. None of these police officers are there. I'm not there. Imagine what he's going to do when he's not getting the quote $1 million that he's worked so hard that he thinks he deserves. Like, sound like the type of guy who might be able to, mutilate somebody sexually. And to be clear, he was not convicted of being the actual cutter because we didn't want to put on Ryan Kevorkian, and it didn't matter for the purposes of sentencing. But Nayeri is the mastermind of this whole thing. We've always known he was the mastermind, and we proved he was the mastermind.
This story is just so crazy. My favorite part of this is that Courtney went on to become a trial attorney. And, I remember she started dating him when she was quite young.
Yeah, she was 16, right. And he was older.
So talk about somebody taking back their power and using it, like, pretty incredible.
That's right. And look, she had a fantastic lawyer who deserves a tremendous amount of credit in Lou Rosenblum, and an amazing detective in Brian Peters as the detective sergeant of this Crimes Against Persons unit of the Newport Beach Police Department. But Courtney also deserves a lot of credit. She put her life on the line to do the right thing. And, the job of a prosecutor fundamentally is to do justice. And, catching a guy this bad is something that, I've never even heard of anything like this, like a case like this where you lure somebody out of a non-extraditable country. But, almost more importantly is, as a prosecutor, you're supposed to, sometimes justice means people get second chances. And I still think Courtney is somebody who really deserved a second chance. And, when you're able to work all those things in together, somebody that is worthy of a little redemption, in a young woman that had her whole life ahead of her, versus a ruthless freaking psycho like this guy, I'll take that trade 10 out of 10 times. So.
Absolutely. Well, this is one to watch. Wicked Game, The Devil in the Desert. It is streaming on Hulu on Tuesday, February 4th. Tell everybody about your book.
Yeah, thank you. So it's been out since September. It's called The Book of Murder, A Prosecutor's Journey Through Love and Death. And, after 17 years in the homicide unit, I don't know how murder became my thing, but you wind up with such a professional focus on one thing from, like murder cases are all, in my mind, they're all fascinating, but especially in a unit that is a vertical prosecution unit where you start the night of the murder and you walk in as the shot caller. You decide when there's enough evidence to charge. You decide who to charge with what. And they let you become a real professional in that. And, domestic violence murders are very different than serial killers. And they're very different than child abuse murders, which are different again from gang murders. And there's this taxonomy of homicide. Like they all wind up with the same charges. But after you do it for 5 or 6 years, you start to see patterns and some really, really interesting things. And I became completely addicted to it. I loved it. I still miss it every day. And I thought that I had an opportunity to educate people about some of the heroic work behind the scenes, the crime lab personnel, some of the detectives, a lot of the unsung heroes in these cases. And I really wanted to share that. And especially in a time where police officers their jobs are harder now than I think they've ever been. And I wanted people to know about that. And also, I'm a true crime junkie myself. That's why I stayed in the unit for as long as I did. And so it's basically, it parallels my career in the homicide unit. I talk about my experiences, how I learned, what I learned along the way. A lot of the myths I dispelled in my own mind, like with serial killers, for example. I thought that they were, I saw Silence of the Lambs. I thought everybody was like Buffalo Bill, and then I realized very quickly that they weren't like Buffalo Bill. Most of them aren't these horribly abused outcasts that we kind of feel sorry for. They're arrogant, narcissistic, egomaniacal a-holes. And they're a lot of times they're clever, they're charming, they're disproportionately intelligent, handsome, and are just, a lot of them have every opportunity in life, and they are beneath contempt when you see some of the things that they do. But it's also fascinating because they tend to do the same things over and over again. They will collect trophies, for example. They love to represent themselves in court, which is fascinating. So I walk through the dating game killer. That's one of the chapters. I go through Tom and Jackie Hawks, that murder, the behind the scenes on that, which is, I had a relationship that ended really badly with my girlfriend at the time, making out with a guy at a wedding. And that breakup led to a surf trip with my buddies that I just got back from today, my trip to Samoa. And I met a boat captain that wound up being instrumental in solving the murder of Tom and Jackie Hawks. So I kind of weave in, my personal life, how that affected my job, and how my job affected my personal life, sometimes not so great. And I walk people through it and really try to share, my experiences in that unit. And the book is available on Amazon. And I just submitted a proposal for my second book, which I'm going to focus on. I talked about one serial killer in the Book of Murder, and I'm going to talk about all of them in my next book. So, yeah.
Well, we're destined to be friends.
Yeah, we'll have to do a murder tour, the murder tour of Newport Beach.
I don't know how we haven't met each other before this, but I have great respect for the work you do. I'm excited about your book, and continued success to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
The amazing Kate Casey.
I want to thank my great guest, Matt Murphy, and remind you to click subscribe. If you want some more episodes, make sure that you are subscribed so you can get all new episodes. I have 6 a week. You can also jump in the Facebook group, Reality Life with Kate Casey. Bonus episodes on my Patreon by going to patreon.com/Kate Casey. And please follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at KCCA, TikTok, it's Kate Casey, and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at Kate Casey. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode.
And now, a next-level moment from AT&T Business. Say you've sent out a gigantic shipment of pillows, and they need to be there in time for International Sleep Day. You've got AT&T 5G, so you're fully confident. But the vendor isn't responding, and International Sleep Day is tomorrow. Luckily, AT&T 5G lets you deal with any issues with ease, so the pillows will get delivered and everyone can sleep soundly, especially you. AT&T 5G requires a compatible plan and device. Coverage not available everywhere. Learn more at att.com/5G network.